Hello and welcome to round 13 of Pro Tour Magic Origins. It's going to be unlucky for someone, but for someone else, this could be one of the very big rounds to get them that much closer to top 8 here. Let's head down to the feature match area and see what they've got to show us. Hello and welcome to round 13 of Pro Tour Magic Origins. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by R&D member Ian Duke, and we've got some great feature matches for you. Headed up by Sam Black, second currently in the Player of the Year race, and absolutely on a tear in this tournament with his very, very powerful mono-red deck. He is up against Gerry Thompson. Now, Gerry, you can see him there smiling away. He's having a fantastic tournament. Started off 3-0 unlimited. He's been carrying on with his winning ways ever since. Each of these players now on 9-3, so poised to make a run for top 8. Sam Black, he's playing for Player of the Year. Gerry Thompson, though, this is his first Pro Tour back after having worked at Wizards of the Coast, which means that he's effectively playing for everything he can get.
Now I know. It'll live. Go.
Yeah, that's right. And each player having sort of various degrees of confidence in their deck. Sam Black, I know, is extremely confident in his mono-red list. It's sort of very heavily metagamed versus what he expected to appear in the tournament. And so far, his predictions have been pretty correct. We'll talk a little bit more about his particular inclusions and changes to his list. In the meantime, Gerry, I've chatted with a couple times this weekend. He's not as enthusiastic about his Green Devotion deck. But he's had some success with it so far, so we'll see if how things play out.
Yeah, at the start of the tournament, he was very excited to. He's been working with Brad Nelson, you know, one of the consensus great players in Standard. Certainly gets in more reps than just about anyone in terms of the Standard formats. But yeah, the green-red deck not necessarily been putting up the same sort of numbers that would be suggested by the amount of people that showed up with it. Mono-red, Sam Black, he's just... If you talk to him at any point in this tournament, he cannot say enough good things about this exact build that he's working with.
We can see here one of the new cards from Magic Origins is the Abbot of Carol Keep.
Death Miss Raptor there from Gerry Thompson. He's already lost a Sylvan Caryatid to Titan Strength on Monastery Swiftspear. An unfortunate situation where Gerry kind of really had to block, even though he doesn't necessarily want to. And yes, Sam Black does have the answer. Stoke the Flames there for Death Miss Raptor means that 2 prowess triggers for Sam Black. He's able to keep on swinging. And this particular build of Mono Red, it's not running the Goblin package with the likes of Hordling Outburst or Dragon Fodder. Instead, it's got these creatures that can apply a little bit more of a beatdown, at least sort of individually. And a morph here from Gerry Thompson. Typically, the morphs in this deck tend to be Rattleclaw Mystic. And Sam Black says, well, I don't really care what it is. I have more removal spells. Immediately ditches the last creature in play for Gerry Thompson and says, I'm going to keep on swinging. 4 lands in play. If anything, a little bit more lands in play than is necessarily required for this red deck.
Yeah, often red decks are happy to stop on about two or three lands, depending on their draw. But you know, Sam's still mounting up a pretty respectable offense here with a couple of prowess creatures.
Yeah, Wild Slash there, triggering prowess again and allowing an attack for 7. Whisperwood Elemental does give Gerry Thompson a couple of blockers, but he's on 5 life. That puts him very much in burn range for this red deck.
Yeah, and Sam Black empty-handed at the start of the turn. Not quite sure yet what he picked up there, but it looks like the Whisperwood Elemental is able to stabilize for Gerry Thompson. However, at that precarious life total of 5, he does need to close the game out pretty quickly before Sam just top decks into enough burn to finish him off.
Yeah, Sam did draw a mountain there, so no help, but he's on 20 life still. Gerry needs to do an awful lot to put this into even really being much of a competition for this exact game. He draws a Dragon Lord Ataka, that potentially able to deal with some of the threats that Sam Black has in play if Gerry can find some red mana. But in the meantime, he just has to hope and pray that the cards coming off the top of Sam Black's deck are nothing too scary. I mean, sadly for him, almost every card in Sam Black's deck is not one that he necessarily wants to see coming. But
Well, at least every
after
non-land card.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good turn for Gerry there. Nissa World Waker into untapping lands into Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, which is a card we've seen pop up occasionally, but I'd call it pretty unusual as far as these green devotion decks go. So this is part of their team's interesting spin on the deck. In addition to a little bit heavier emphasis on morphs, we can see the Death Mist Raptor in Gerry Thompson's graveyard. So things starting to stabilize a little bit here for Gerry, and this is always one of those tricky positions against a red deck where you know you want to close the game out quickly before the red player top decks into burn, but you also want to leave enough behind that something like, say, a top deck Goblin Heel Cutter won't be the end of you. So we'll see how much Gerry decides to commit here and decides to try to end the game quickly versus playing a little bit more safe and closing out some of Sam's outs.
Yeah, I mean, with the Shaman of Forgotten Ways, he also has a Wooded Foothills. He is going to be able to cast that Dragon Lord Ataka if he wishes. He just needs to protect himself wherever he can. I mean, there's 2 cards in Sam Black's hand. It has to be a consideration for Gerry that at least one of them is a burn spell. So tapping too low might be something that he's wary of.
Although, yeah, Dragon Lord Ataka is nice here because it can kind of check Sam for non-creature spells. Because both those creatures had prowess, Sam might try to respond and boost them with a burn spell, which would give Gerry more information about what his actual life total is as opposed to his effective life total compared to Sam's burn capabilities. But as we know, Sam only has 2 mounts in his hand, so Gerry's able to, with reasonable confidence, start mounting an attack.
So Gerry Thompson there takes Sam Black down to just 4 life. Sam absolutely looking for the top card of his deck to do an awful lot here, and I don't think there's a card in Sam Black's deck that he could have drawn there that was going to be able to do enough. Gerry Thompson takes the first game, and we're going to be going to sideboards there. But that's the end of our first game, so we're going to have a couple of messages, but we'll be back with plenty more Magic.
Ultra Pro is the place to go for all your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information. 24 players, 1 shot at immortality. Watch the best players in the world battle for the Magic World Championship starting Thursday, August 27th from PAX Prime in Seattle, Washington.
Hello and welcome back to round 13 here at Pro Tour Magic Origins. Just while the players on the front table are sideboarding, we're going to get a live look in at one of our other tables. And Matthew Sperling here on the back table, he's playing Abzan Control. On the other side of things, Sean McLaren, currently leading on the Canadian national team race, he's playing Abzan Rally the Ancestors. So the same colors, but 2 quite different plans from these different decks. We can already see a couple of Siege Rhino in the graveyard for Sperling. They're likely to be the things that buffed his life total above 20, currently at 21. But Sean McLaren currently has plenty of threats in play. And Matt Sperling, 1 win already. And if he gets 1 more game win, he's going to get to lock up gold, a very important landmark for him.
And Sperling with a pretty traditional Abzan control deck, going up into Planeswalkers and such at the high end. So he's taken a pretty safe approach to this tournament, I would say.
Quick update there. Sorry, this is game 1. So Matt Sperling currently he's got a little bit more work to do, but the incentive is very much still there. And has to look on as he sees Merciless Executioner and Rally the Ancestors. Let's see what this can do here. We've been talking about Rally quite a lot the last round or 2, but we've not seen it do its big finish. But this might be the time. There's a Mogus's Marauder coming into play. We count up the number of Black Devotion, and that's enough to give a number of creatures haste and intimidate. That means that Matthew Sperling's not really going to be able to block effectively. There's also going to be some card drawing for Sean McLaren with those Elvish Visionaries. And most importantly of all, that Nantuko Husk can be absolutely colossal on these attacks. So, as it happens, Merciless Executioner, meaning there doesn't even need to be any Intimidate, because Matt Sperling forced to sacrifice the one creature he has. That Tasigur on top of his deck, that'll get turned face down soon enough. It's just kind of a remnant of the Courser of Crufix that was in play. Ultimately, it might prove irrelevant because I would imagine that Sean McLaren's going to be able to do quite a bit of damage this turn.
And for those unfamiliar, Rally the Ancestors brings creatures back from the graveyard, but doesn't by itself give them haste. And that's where Mogus's Marauder comes in to actually let you attack with the creatures the turn you've brought them back.
So the 3/1s are likely to be the ones with haste that are actually going to get to swing in on the natural. Various of the other creatures, less reason to give them haste because they're more valuable as Nantuko Husk food.
Looks to me like
1 point short?
Yeah, 18 points of possible damage here.
It's 18 points of damage, plus a couple of card draws off those Elvish Visionaries. It's not as if Sean McLaren in a bad spot here, though. I'm sure he'd much rather get the extra point in somewhere where he could.
And it all comes in. So +8/+8 on Nantuko Husk for a total of 10 from that. 2 more from Mogus's Marauder. And then 3/3, 6 more from the Merciless Executioners for a total of 18 against Matt Sperling's 19 life.
Sperling, I'm sure, all the more happy that he got a chance to play Siege Rhino early game, gain a little bit of life where he could, because that last point of life, more valuable than any of those that preceded it. And he's going to have to get something very impressive at the top of his deck here if he's going to stabilize this game. And in fact, of course, Sean McLaren knew that the card on top of Matt Sperling's deck was Tasigur, thanks to Courser of Crufix. So that means if he's casting Tasigur, what else is he doing? If he can cast it for 1 and then activate it, that only leaves him with 1 more mana, and that not going to be enough to do a whole lot here.
Activate Tasigur.
Sean gets a choice. There's a Den Protector or a Hero's Downfall that he could give back to Matt Sperling here. So Sean McLaren does win game 1 there. Ultimately, while the Rally Ancestors didn't literally get the kill, it got enough of the kill that Matt unable to really respond there. So it looks like we've got some synchronized shuffling going on here. Almost all the matches in sideboarding right now, but Sam Black has absolutely been able to help us out here. He starts off with a Zergo Bell Striker, a Searing Blood to clear the path that means that Zergo gets to hit in. And thinking about Searing Blood, this one of the cards that Sam Black has identified as being incredibly important in this red deck in its current configuration.
That's right, Tim. And the main difference here is previously in the standard format, there were a number of decks that were essentially immune to Searing Blood. They had either no creatures at all or no or very few creatures that had 2 or less toughness. So Searing Blood was sort of relegated to more of a metagame choice or even a sideboard option. Sam contends that in this current format for this Pro Tour, because of the presence of cards like Satyr Wayfinder and Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, now Searing Blood is effective against decks where it previously was a blank. So against Blue-Black Control, for example, now you can take out Jace and deal 3 damage to Jace's controller with a card that normally would have been dead against a control deck. So huge, huge change in the metagame there.
Quick update from one of the back tables. We have a result on our King of the Hill table. Stephen Neal is the player with the crown now. Yuki Matsumoto falling with his Sidisi Whip deck to the red aggro of the American. And in the meantime, Joel Larson also a game up with his aggro deck against Peter Viren. So Gerry Thompson looking to see whether or not he can press the advantage from game 1. I feel like he got a little fortunate in terms of how Sam's later draws were in game 1. We'll find out soon enough whether or not he has a great sideboard for this matchup. Roast there dealing with the Abbot on Sam Black's side of things, but that not necessarily, I mean, not necessarily the sort of high-impact card that he's going to want lots of as this game goes longer, if it does go long.
And funny little interaction here on the previous turn. You could hear Sam attack with Zergo, and Gerry instantly blocks with the Sylvan Caryatid. He did the same thing in game 1 early in the game, but at that time Sam had a copy of Titan Strength to take out the Sylvan Caryatid, but Gerry sticking to his guns and just snapping off the block with the Caryatid. I like that play a lot. He's not afraid of it. And attempts a Whisperwood Elemental, which is met with 2 burn spells, one of which is Searing Blood, but Gerry able to sacrifice the Whisperwood Elemental.
So a big dash there from Sam Black, meaning that he can get Gerry Thompson down into single-digit life total. Gerry just trying to stay alive in these turns because he knows that if the game goes long, he has the special form of card advantage that comes in green of just having creatures so big that red has to use multiple cards to deal with them.
That's right.
That's right. Yep.
And small correction earlier, I believe Sam did Searing Blood first on the Whisperwood Elemental before revealing that he did a Lightning Strike also. So Gerry then had to sacrifice and take the 3 from Searing Blood, I believe. That's the way that it played out. A little hard to tell from a vantage point.
A small Genesis Hydra here. Gerry knows that he can't afford to be playing around too much.
Dash. Can't block.
And the advantage of not using those Sylvan Caryatids for the Genesis Hydra, again, is allows him to block. They do have hexproof, so Heel Cutter can't push past them, but it does push past the Genesis Hydra. So Gerry just deciding if he wants to get in front of the Heel Cutter or not.
Just the one on Zergo.
Yeah, Zergo was always getting blocked there. That the comparatively safe block. It looks like Gerry says, I'm happy to take, well, maybe not happy, content to take 3 from Goblin Heel Cutter. I mean, at the moment, if Sam's just using a lot of his mana to be dashing out the Heel Cutter, that's not necessarily as scary as some of the other options.
And Titan Strength on the Heel Cutter to make it 6, with Gerry down to 3 here. Gerry preserving his Sylvan Caryatid so that he can definitely cast Dragon Lord Atarka this turn. Again, he knows he needs to end the game quickly before Sam top decks more burn.
Yeah, a huge amount of top decks that are very, very powerful for Sam Black here. In the meantime, though, if you're looking at power, an Elder Dragon is certainly not the worst. Atarka coming down there, clearing out Sam Black's side of the board, but there's a roast. That now means that there's a dash and no blocking for Gerry Thompson, and we're going to game 3.
Oh, Sam.
A little smile there from Black.
Okay, not punished.
And so, yeah, we're going to get a chance to get a second look at what's going on our back text table. Matt Sperling playing against Sean McLaren. Matt Sperling currently only taken a small amount of damage at the start of our game 2. But, of course, Sperling with plenty of work to do here because last game didn't quite work out how he'd hoped for. Takes a rally in at the Ancestors as soon as he can, using Caves of Koalos and Thoughtseize there to take 3 damage on his first turn, but he does not want to see that instant resolve because when it does, it's a real problem.
Looks like a couple of Grim Haruspecs in Sean McLaren's hand, if I'm reading the art correctly there.
Yeah, Grim Haruspeck's a card that took a little bit of time to really find a place in Standard, but certainly very powerful alongside the likes of Nantuko Husk. And Matt Sperling here saying, again, I'm happy to bolt myself to cast a Thoughtseize. This time, what's he going to take? He's looking at a hand that is as much about what's not there as what is, because there's absolutely no lands in that hand. It's all spells, and taking the Elvish Visionary means that even if Sean McLaren finds a land, he's not really got a large amount going in these early turns.
Scry 1.
Sean McLaren there forced to just pass it back, the 9th ranked player in the world without a play, and just has to watch as Matt Sperling does his thing.
Sperling with a couple copies of Nissa.
Send to the bottom.
A casual little, yeah, I'll send that to the bottom on the scry there. Matt Sperling knows that he's already kind of ahead on the board, activates his fetch land, gets his 3rd mana, and we are going to see the first sort of real threat, I suppose, from Matt Sperling.
Planes at a force, if you don't mind. Sounds good.
He's casting Nissa and he's saying, oh, I'm going to be fetching a forest with Nissa, so I'm going to fetch a plains now, then fetch the forest. Let's just save on shuffling a little bit, because clearly you're not interacting with me with your one land there. Finds the forest. Probably plays it. No need to give away more information than absolutely necessary.
Cards. 7.
So Sean McLaren missing a number of land drops here. The Vancouver mulligan not necessarily meaning that every game ends up being a perfect mana draw, although it certainly has smoothed out a few of those games. I know players very positive about it. And the first damage for Sean McLaren here, Matt Sperling at 13 just off damage from Thought Seizers and his own lands, but now starting to get damage in himself. And Sean McLaren with a Lamar Waste might be taking some damage from his own lands at some point.
2 life and draw 2 cards. I'm at 11. Yep.
Nice crisp play there from Matt Sperling, clearly declaring his modes on his Abzan Charm, taking a few points of damage to draw cards, and continuing to beat with Nissa. And every turn, extra lands coming along, which means that Nissa getting that much closer to turning into a Planeswalker, igniting her spark.
Again. 9.
Impressive the amount of life that Matt Sperling has been able to pay for assorted effects thus far in this game. On just 9 life, but with Sean McLaren yet to play a spell in this game, I'm sure that Matt Sperling does not mind the situation he finds himself in.
Yeah, he could conceivably find himself in a bit of trouble if the game goes too much longer to something like Mogus's Marauder, but in general, this rally deck isn't that capable of pushing through small amounts of damage. And I like the way that Matt's aggressively just drawing cards, making sure he hits his land drops, so that when Sean does finally draw out of his mana screw, he's just into a powerful mid and late game, making it impossible for him to catch up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was speaking to Zvi Moshowitz about the Abzan Rally deck, and he said that one of the additions that they made off the lists that they had seen from other events was to just add a single bestow creature in there, just so that they were able to throw off people's math just a little bit in terms of how much damage might be coming along on any given turn.
Oh, very interesting.
Token that I'm going to add a token, yeah. Thank you.
So Nissa comes along, brings with her a friend, a 4/4 legendary token. There it is. That one able to speed up the clock a little bit more than just having Nissa herself plinking in for damage. A huge amount of lands in play here for Matt Sperling. 7, of course, being the magic number to flip Nissa. In some respects, not a huge amount of pressure for him to commit any more threats to the board. He is in a winning position here. It's just a matter of riding it out, and he's got a Hero's Downfall in hand to get rid of whatever the first threat is from Sean McLaren.
Scry 1. Bottom. Land 4. Go.
Just because it's the Pro Tour doesn't mean that occasionally there aren't a few easy games. I'm sure Matt Sperling not too sad to have a chance to level this one up without necessarily having too much of a grind to do so.
Sure.
Yeah, Sean McLaren here, basically letting Matt Sperling go through the motions, hasn't had a decision beyond what to discard at any point in this game. Another Nissa there for Matt Sperling. He could cast it. You can have a transformed and untransformed Nissa play in play at the same time. Matt desperately trying to find a way where the life totals can make this game look close with his Read the Bones to go down to 7 life here.
Thoughts easier.
Sperling continuing to deplete his own life total.
He wants to deal 40 damage this game, and the only way that he's going to be able to do that is by taking down his own life total a little bit too.
Take downfall. I drop to 5.
Yeah, this is impressive. Just wants to watch the world burn. Everyone's going to lose some life. 5 to 6 the life total. not really reflective of how this game has gone whatsoever. But Sean McLaren still sort of stoically drawing, discarding for his turn. Pretty shortly, I think we're probably going to jump back to our main match because I don't really think that there's a huge amount of real Magic the Gathering being played at this table. Meanwhile, Sam Black has already got in for his first points of damage. He's cast a Monastery Swift Spear. He's attacked with it, and we've got a proper race on our hands. Sylvan carried the play for Gerry Thompson here on turn 2. Again, putting into play a creature that's going to be able to block. In this case, blocking possibly more important than accelerating mana. And Sam has another Swift Spear and attacks. He's trying to sort of play a bit of mind game with Gerry here. Gerry looking perturbed.
So really interesting here. In the previous 2 games, Sam showed Titan Strength. It's actually the only copy of Titan Strength, at least in his main deck. So it's kind of interesting for Gerry. He has the wrong impression of how many copies of that spell that Sam might be playing there. But does decide to block anyway and isn't punished for it this time.
Yeah, once you've blocked once and got away with it, you're that much more incentivized to do it in future. You've got a much better chance of getting away with it because the amount of prowess required to get to 3 to kill off a Sylvan Caryatid, certainly not happening on that turn, and it might take a while to get there.
Gerry asks, is Paul dead? Of course, referring to Paul Ukranos, Pelukranos. And it is. To 2 burn spells, though. It could have been worse. It could have been a roast. Sam does have roast, access to roast post board and did bring it in last game. So,
I mean, this way around there were lots of prowess triggers. That enough to put Gerry Thompson to 12. So, I mean, it was sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't, really. Thompson here running out of cards in hand pretty quickly. Just Deathmyth's Raptor and Shame of the Forgotten Ways sat there in his hand. Not necessarily the big, powerful late game cards, though. To be fair, he's not quite on big, powerful late game mana just yet.
but here comes Whispered Elemental. This was the card that stabilized him in the first game. And depending on what Sam has left in his hand, it could threaten to do the same here. Looks like Sam Black with an Abbot of Carroll Keep. And we may get to see the strength of this new Origins card here, depending on what he flips up. Unfortunately, just a mountain for him. So no prowess triggers, no answer to the Whispered Elemental this turn. And Gerry's going to get to untapped on a stable board with a pretty healthy life total. I think he's got to be happy with how things are playing out here.
I was talking to Sam Black and his friend Justin Cohen. Justin, of course, one of the leaders for the Rookie of the Year race, both on the same deck. And I was sort of saying, well, if this deck's so good, how do you lose? And Justin was pretty quick to say, well, you draw a lot of lands. That's what happened to Cohen early on in this tournament. And it seems to be what's happening to Sam Black a little bit in this particular round.
Yeah, it may seem like Sam's getting excessively unlucky here, but remember, he did have to trade 2 burn spells for Pelukranos. That's a 2-for-1 right there with 2 action spells. And Monastery Swift Spear, I mean, it's a great card. It's fantastic. No question it's an auto-include in these red decks. But its vulnerability is when you run out of spells to cast, it's just a 1/2 creature. And that is just tiny in comparison to these huge monsters the green decks can put up. So I think it may be a little bit unfair to say Sam's getting excessively unlucky here. He's definitely a little bit flooded, but this is the way that Gerry wants the matchup to play out. It is according to his plan.
Yeah, and Sam Black here, I mean, we saw him Hollywooding a little bit about the Titan strength early on. This really the time that his acting skills are going to get put to the test because he definitely wants Gerry Thompson to be worried about what those 2 cards in his hand are.
Yeah, there's always this concept of like a virtual life total against a red deck where if they have cards in hand, you have to assume that some number of them may be burn spells. And so Gerry's at 12, but he may be thinking, well, really I'm at 6 or something if there's 2 lightning strikes there. But wow, Manifest gets turned up. It was Dragon Lord Atarka all along. And that puts Sam with just 1 turn left. And with us knowing he has 2 mountains in his hand and a 3rd off the top, unfortunately, that is not going to be it for Sam. So yeah,
he lets Gerry know that he kept a 1-lander. Sometimes when you draw lots of land after a 1-lander, it feels like it worked out. Didn't really work out for Sam Black just there.
That's right. I revised my statement. By the end of that game, I definitely would say that Sam was bona fide flooded there.
But we're going to get a chance to see a slightly different brand of matchup here, because while Joel Larson is on red aggro, we have something a little bit different on the other side. Peter Viren is playing blue-black control, so more like Esper control there, looking at the land base. Two very different schools of thought on deck building here. Hangerback Walker in play for Viren on the right-hand side of our screen. Meanwhile, Joel Larson, he's got Eidolon of the Great Revel, he's got that Lightning Berserker and the Abbot of Carroll Keep. He is on the beatdown plan. We see Joel Larson's record there. Interestingly, Joel Larson and Gerry Thompson both had their biggest success at the same Pro Tour, that Pro Tour being Pro Tour Gatecrash, where Larson made the finals, Gerry T made top 8, his one Pro Tour top 8. I'm sure both of them hoping to have some successes in these last few rounds to be able to round things out. Joel Larson, of course, currently very much looking like a likely worthy champion of Sweden for the World Magic Cup. And if he could really string something together, he might even be in position to look at European slots for the World Championship going on. Second Eidolon the Great Revel here for Joel Larson. Now, his deck does include quite a few more cards that are going to be triggering those Eidolons, but nonetheless, Peter Viren has to be concerned because he's the one that's really on the clock here.
Indeed, and already down to 12 life here.
And that's 12 life before attacks as well. There's a whole host coming into the red zone for Joel Larson, who seems completely untroubled by the fact he's only drawn 2 lands. I mean, if you have to script out the way that games go for this red deck, I don't really think that they necessarily involve drawing an awful lot of land. Ultimate Price dealing with one of the copies of Eidolon the Great Revel.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, there is only one Eidolon the Great Revel in play there. The other one was an Abbot. I apologize for that. Lots of creatures with fire in their artwork. There's a bit of a theme for this red deck.
Hangerback Walker ticking up. It may have been tempting there to make a couple Thopters just to have a little bit more coverage on blockers, but this puts it out of Searing Blood range. It's still able to block profitably against the 2 creatures that Joel Larson has. Viren down to just 5 life. He does have a few ways to gain life in his deck. One of the important ones is Foul Tongue Invocation. And I think him winning this game is going to rely on him at some point drawing into a kicked Foul Tongue Invocation, so to speak.
Well, I mean, there's an exquisite Firecraft in Joel Larson's hand. He just drew the 3rd land. And that means that one of the sort of key bastions of blue-black control is that when it absolutely has to, it can stop your spells with counter magic. And Exquisite Firecraft says, if I've already cast a few spells, if I've got spell mastery, then that plan, well, I mean, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely a game changer in this matchup. It means that the control decks are pressured to either find a way to gain life or need to end the game in a hurry, because eventually that red deck will draw into an uncounterable Exquisite Firecraft. And Larson's still with a pretty full grip for this point in the game.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that happens when you don't draw too many lands earlier on, is that there's a limit to how many spells you're going to play in any given turn. And here, Peter Viren can only block one of those 2 creatures that are coming in. They both have fire breathing. Peter taking a little bit of damage here. And there's Zergo. Very patient play here from Joel Larson.
Yeah, I mean, Larson, he doesn't have spell mastery yet, so the Exquisite Firecraft would still be counterable at this point. And he knows he's in no rush to play it. Barring a way for Viren to gain a massive amount of life, he can just kind of bide his time.
What does it do? Copy it. Okay.
Oh, is this Psychic Rebuttal? Very interesting. One of the new cards from Magic Origins. We'll see if we can take a look at it.
Yeah, certainly not something that we've seen much of in the feature match area thus far.
Spell Mastery Deflection variant.
And a big pump of the fist there from Joel Larson.
You got
Yep.
hurt at night. Yeah.
So that there, a result for Joel Larson. He's able to find a way to square that up, but we're going to get a chance to see a little bit more Magic in our feature match area. We've already seen plenty of it thus far between Matt Sperling and Sean McLaren. This, their game 3 now, and it looks like Sean McLaren, the player with all of the creatures
16,
on board.
20, Sean.
A Thoughtseize there revealing that there's end hostilities and 2 copies of Elspeth. Elspeth currently not quite castable for Matt Sperling.
18, Sean.
And we're just going to get the life totals up to date on that. I believe that 5 and 6 is not quite accurate. If it is, then Matt Sperling has all sorts to worry about. Yeah. Add an extra 10 or so onto each of those, and I think you get a little bit closer. There we go, 16 to 20. And while Tasigur is in play for Matt Sperling, Tasigur on its own may prove not quite good enough, as that Thoughtseize is going to make Sperling's life a little bit tricky here. If there was only one Elspeth in that hand, what do you think you'd take, Ian Duke?
Elspeth.
It's a good question. I mean, it's hard to say without seeing the rest of McLaren's hand.
14.
I think that's totally the determining factor here. I mean, it looks like he already took Elspeth instead, so there must be some information in his hand that we need to learn about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the Abzan Rally the Ancestors deck is a little bit more safe against mass removal than many decks that are playing lots of creatures, simply because in principle you can be casting Rally the Ancestors to get them all back.
That's right. I mean, of note here, I believe that is a Grim Haruspex for McLaren.
It is.
So end hostilities here lets him draw 4 cards. So I guess he's not really worried about that at all, and maybe is hoping to top deck a second Thoughtseize before the second Elspeth can come down. So I believe you're right, Tim. He's just not really concerned at all about getting his board swept away, and in fact would maybe even welcome it because it puts him closer to a Rally the Ancestors.
Yep.
So Nissa here finding a forest. Scouting out, finding lands. As is customary, that forest immediately gets played. No need to give away more information. There are a few other lands in Matt Sperling's hand, but it's not as if he's particularly in trouble with his colors there. As it happens, much of the information already known by Sean McLaren thanks to his Thoughtseize, but certainly no downside to that play.
So an interesting thing here is McLaren can keep getting in with the Elvish Visionaries. If Sperling decides to block, well, then McLaren's just up a card from the Grim Haruspex. And even when Elspeth comes down next turn, which presumably it will, even with the soldier tokens there, Sean McLaren can still just keep attacking into Elspeth or into Sperling's life total with the Visionaries, and it's pretty hard for Sperling to justify blocking there.
At some point, that chip damage, though, is going to be relevant. He's on 11 life now. Not too many extra blocks he can do. You see Nissa Sage Animus. That's certainly one of the things that he's going to be looking to achieve sometime in the future. But with just 5 lands in play for now, it's going to be a couple of turns before that happens. I mean, I guess that the sweet spot will be if he plays 6th land now, cast Elspeth, potentially make some tokens to stabilize a little bit. Next turn, play another land, flip. So I've got 2 Planeswalkers in play, and then it's kind of a 3-on-1. 2 Planeswalkers and Matt Sperling playing against Sean McLaren and his relatively small creatures.
So here comes Elspeth. And the really interesting thing to see in these next couple turns is how Sperling decides to deal with those attacking Elvish Visionaries. One option is just to ignore them, let them keep attacking, and start attacking Sean McLaren himself and pressuring his life total. Another is to try to go up to Elspeth Emblem, which would force Sean McLaren to start attacking Elspeth, which buys him more time. But I think what he really doesn't want to do is just block and kill all those Visionaries and let Sean McLaren draw 3 more cards, because one of the most probable ways he would lose this game is McLaren drawing into a Rally the Ancestors and then getting back all those Visionaries, drawing more cards, etc., etc. But if Sperling just keeps taking the damage, which he did this turn, then it opens up the door to something like a Mogus's Marauder, just busting through for extra burst damage that he wasn't anticipating.
So Hero's Downfall there, limiting the options that Matt Sperling has available to him. The Elspeth plan suddenly not working out quite so well. The End Hostilities is still there, but looks no more attractive than it did a few turns ago. Scry and a transformation there for Matt Sperling.
So what Sperling really wants is a single target removal spell to take care of the Grim Haruspex, and there's the hero's downfall he needs. So now he can put together a game plan. He can take out the Haruspex, line up a sweeper the following turn, and that will truly leave Sean McLaren out of resources. And at that point, all he fears is a naturally top-decked Rally the Ancestors. And Sperling should be able to close out the game pretty quickly there in that window. So it's certainly not over yet, but we're starting to see Sperling's plan piece together.
Unlike previous turns, Tasiga can now attack.
Damage on my downfall, Haruspex. Sure.
McLaren blocking there does force the hero's downfall sooner than it might otherwise have come along.
Although Sperling's pretty happy with that because McLaren blocked, planning to get a card off the Caryatid. And Sperling actually used the hero's downfall there to 2 for 1.
So now Sean has a little bit of thinking to do.
Right. Plus.
And yes, so just a very natural source of card advantage, and in this case, acceleration. Every turn, gaining a loyalty, you reveal the top card. If it's a land, it comes into play. If it's not, well, you know, it goes into your hand.
Is that right?
At 18.
Oh, I thought you wrote down like apologies. Attacker 4. I thought you.
Yeah.
So you're at 18.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you picked up your pen when I attacked. I thought you'd take it. My mistake.
So McLaren's still deciding what to block with here.
I'm a big fan of the communication that Matt Sperling uses during a game. Absolutely. Among the clearest players about his intent and what he's doing of anyone you can see. And that's certainly something that's very important at every level in the game.
Totally agree.
Bottom.
Sperling, so interesting there, he was considering leaving the forest on top, or the land on top, not because he wanted to draw it, but because he's planning on activating Tasigur. And with his graveyard so stocked of powerful cards, actually leaving a land on top makes it much more likely that he'll get one of the 3 powerful cards in his graveyard rather than milling into another one. But he just decides the options are better, puts the land to the bottom, and is actually mills into an Ugin.
Tasigur again.
Wow.
Still all pretty powerful options here.
I mean, that kind of the signature of this Abzan control deck, right? That the vast majority of your cards are at least a 1-for-1, if not better.
That's
and
right.
that means that Tasigur at its absolute best, that when Tasigur is bad, that means that Tasigur is giving just the wrong kind of answer. And when Tasigur's good, goodness.
Plus.
You can see here the pace of play picking up a little bit for Matt Sperling. Part of that might be because he can see the round clock and is concerned about actually closing out this game, but part of it, I would imagine, is just that he's quite excited to have all of his ducks in a row and able to do a huge amount on every single turn.
Yeah, now did you mention before this is an important break point for Matt Sperling's pro level?
I believe so, yes. I mean, ultimately, this last Pro Tour is just a huge one for everybody in terms of doing things, but he is playing this match for gold. So this is the difference between Matt Sperling being able to go to every Pro Tour next year or having to pick and choose his spots, use his silver invite wisely, and hope to parlay that into further Pro Tour invitations. Platinum will come if he makes top 8.
And he's still very much in contention for that with a 9-3 record. If he wins out from here, he will definitely make the top 8.
Ugin.
A little pause there.
Not every day you hear, you can have Ugin.
And the reason for that being, of course, that Matt Sperling does not have the mana this turn to be able to cast Ugin.
Right. Also, I think Sean McLaren knows the only way he can really win this game is with a top-decked Rally the Ancestors, probably next turn or at maximum within the next 2 turns.
Yeah, we can't quite see everything that's in Sean McLaren's graveyard, but I always like to assume that a Rally the Ancestors for any reasonably stocked graveyard is, if not a win, certainly a great way of getting close to it.
It's like just a land, I believe.
All I could tell for sure was that it was not an exciting white card.
Instead, activate Tasigur. Dim Protector Elspeth.
Elspeth.
Do you want to give me the card that I want to get, or do you want to give me a card that gets me the card I want to get? Powerful interactions here from this Abzan control deck.
Plus. Ultimate price.
Ultimate price, but we might be seeing a different kind of ultimate soon enough. Elspeth gradually gaining in loyalty here.
Vanessa, rather.
Sorry, yes.
Sperling declining to attack there, I believe. Just wanting to keep up maximum number of blockers. Keeping a variety of green and black blockers is actually important here. Since Mogus's Martyr grants Intimidate, it actually depends on what color of creature is being targeted by Mogus's Marauder. So he's thinking about combinations that could happen here with Rally the Ancestors, perhaps.
You find yourself playing a funny little color matching game of wanting to make sure that you have the right bodies in place to stop.
It really can get quite complicated.
So Hero's Downfall dealing with Nissa, but there's absolutely the potential that she could come back thanks to Tasiga. So many lands in play here for Matt Sperling. He's got a very full grip. He can do an awful lot this turn if he so wishes. Languish joining end hostilities in the mass removal stakes. Languish, of course, particularly good in as much as it does not kill Tasiga. A card that I think a lot of us were expecting to see a huge amount of at this Pro Tour.
Though things are getting a little bit tricky for Sperling here. He doesn't have a great way of closing out the game in a hurry. I mean, he can, of course, play out his powerful Planeswalkers, but those do take quite a few turns to close out the game. And other than that, you know, he'll have to start attacking with his creatures and committing them, which may leave him open to some sort of Rally the Ancestors shenanigans. Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell what his game plan will be here, but I think he does want to hurry up and finish the game pretty quickly. They're also running up pretty close to time here with just 4 minutes left on the clock. So Sperling wanting to be careful and not leaving himself open to a sudden surprise combo turn, but also needing to win at some point here. And he finally does get into the red zone.
Yeah, Abzan Charm there, putting an extra couple of +1/+1 counters on his creatures, because now is the time where basically Matt Sperling says, I need to actually just end this game. Finding another die there for Elspeth, but we know that the right kind of die when it comes to Elspeth might just be Hero's Downfall. As it is, though, the creature's in play, that's enough to produce a winning clock, and Matt Sperling wins against the clock, wins against Sean McLaren, advances to 10-3, and hopefully we're going to be able to get a little bit of conversation with him. We see there Marshall Sutcliffe down on the floor. Hopefully we'll be able to get him to have a bit of a chat with Matt. But a lot of great magic in the feature match area. I felt like Sam Black possibly a little unfortunate with the way that his draws panned out.
Indeed.
That potentially one of the weaknesses of the red deck, that when it does draw a lot of lands, its cards aren't perhaps as immediately powerful as what everyone else is doing. But the rest of the time, if it doesn't draw many lands, it's just a great deck.
Yeah, definitely has potential for explosive starts. Agree to that for sure.
And Gerry Thompson, congratulations to him. Still very much in the hunt, in the thick of things, now at 10-3. Just 2 rounds left as standard. I'm going to be back on the feature match floor soon enough, watching the matches going on. But on the feature match floor right now, we got Marshall Sutcliffe, and he's going to be able to get some words in with Matt Sperling. Oh, it sounds like they're just doing a couple of last little bits and pieces on the floor there, making sure that Matt's de-sideboarded properly. Obviously, super duper important, more important in many respects than us getting a word in with him. We will try and get that word in, though. But, I mean, in terms of decks that you've seen so far and the way that things are panning out, how important do you think it's going to be in the top 8 where everyone knows the exact lists? We saw that Gerry Thompson didn't know about exactly how many Titan strengths there were.
Yes.
Could that be a big factor when we get to top 8?
It definitely could be a big factor, especially for someone like Sam Black, who has so carefully cultivated his list against the expected metagame. There are a lot of individual card choices in there, 1s and 2s, 2s and 3s, that are specially tailored to what he expects to face. And when his opponents know exactly what he has there, it just sort of, you know, lets them focus in their game plan a little bit when they know what to play around.
But of course, a couple more rounds to go before we get to top 8. And before we even get to our next round of Magic, we do now have that interview with Matt Sperling.
Hey there, Marshall Sutcliffe down here in the feature match area. Matt Sperling, that win got you gold for the season, is that correct?
That's right. I came in with 30 points, needing a 10-6. Now with a record of 10-3, I can do no worse than 10-6. Disqualifications aside, I'm going to be locked for gold. So again, for next year.
So congratulations first for that, but I'm assuming your eyes are now looking a little further down the road. What are your goals now for the tournament now that you've met your primary goal?
Yeah, and I hesitate to even call gold my primary goal. I was 6-2 yesterday. Went to sleep, I'm sharing a room with Paul Rietzel and Dave Williams. I told them, look, here's what I got to do to top 8. I'm looking to go X1. I think the Abzan deck I'm playing is good enough. And going 10-6 was not really part of the conversation. I'm happy to now have that, but definitely trying to get another 2 or 3 wins to get in that top 8. That would mean platinum. That would mean a second top 8 for me. That's what I've got my eye on right now.
I love it. So that was merely a hurdle that is now behind you, but the goal is actually the finish line, which is the top 8 for you here.
Yeah, that's how I describe it. I mean, the next time I show up to a Pro Tour not trying a top 8 will be the first. I mean, that's always my goal. I'd like to say maybe my first time I top 8, I should have aimed for winning the whole thing. Maybe that would have helped me. But no, my goal is, when I set out, is to make a top 8.
Well, congratulations on gold, and good luck with your next goal.
Thank you.
All right, let's send it back to the news desk and Rich Hagan.
Thanks very much to Marshall and, of course, to Matt Sperling. Congratulations to him, Gold Pro once again, and maybe a lot more to come. We've got a lot more to come, but yesterday we announced the new members of the Magic Hall of Fame, the Pro Tour Hall of Fame, 3 new members. And for those of you who didn't get a chance to be with us on Friday, we know that some of you decide to work on Friday. What were you thinking? Now's a chance to recap that, and we will be right back with live action here at Pro Tour Magic Origins. See you in a few.